we have here leaders from a bunch of different startups who have been on the frontier of some really innovative, some really transformative technologies to solve these big challenges we're talking about in food security and climate change. And the thing that impresses me individually and collectively about this group is it wasn't just the science they had to figure out, it was all the other things around it. So infrastructure, stakeholders. So they've had to get over the mountain, around the mountain, and through the mountain. And that's a lot of what we're going to hear from them today. So we're really pleased to have leaders from the following companies. Barak Ranon with WaterGen. Don't hold him against him, from Raleigh. Jamie Tyrell. Jamie Tyrell here from RenaissanceAg. First time here in St. Louis.
Thank you.
Larry Clarke, longtime St. Louisan, Bungie alumni.
Yeah, Bungie alumni.
And Mike DeCamp with CoverCress. Recently, big news, big deal with the acquisition by Bayer and the broader partnership I know he's going to talk about. And then last but not least, remote, we have Matt Mandel here with us from AeroFarms. Matt, thanks for joining remote. Can you hear us okay? Great, perfect. Perfect. So the way that we're going to start this out is to get all of you guys to get a little more familiar with each of these companies so that you'll be able to help me in learning more about their stories, learning more about their struggles by asking them questions that are going to help all of us with the other things we're trying to do here in this ecosystem. So I think we'll just go in order, if that sounds all right to you guys. Did you have a specific order you prefer? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so perfect. I got that right without even cheating.
Absolutely did.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so Barak, you're up first. Take it away.
Fantastic. Are they going to load the PowerPoint? Fantastic. Hi, guys. So my name is Barak, and I'm originally born in Israel. I live now in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm president and CEO of WaterGen Americas. We switch the slide. Can I switch it? Or?
You can do it.
Go for it.
All right. So I'm here to talk about the challenge of drinking water. As you all know, it's a worldwide problem in general, and I'm going to go very quick because we have limited time. There's over 2 billion people with the problem of access to drinking water. It's getting worse, by the way. 80% of most diseases are going through water and causing a lot of issues. 1.7 million kids die a year from that around the world. And by 2025, 50% of the population on Earth is scheduled to have a problem to getting to clean drinking water. Just to understand, according to statistics, each minute, 1 million plastic bottles are discarded. That means after 90 minutes of this panel, it's 90 million bottles. We can fill out the whole park. But we're going to talk about that later. First, about water. WaterGen basically went to create a third source of water. Historically, there is the ground, ocean, and now for the first time, we want to try and bring, which we have, third source of water. So we're no longer dependent on historic land or ocean for water. The company was founded in 2009. It's a technology company out of Israel. And we basically, in over a decade now, are developing and selling atmospheric water generator, which I will explain shortly. We operate in many countries around the world. We have sales in over 20 countries, and we have facilities, manufacturing facilities in 3 continents, and happy to have one in the United States as well. So what is basically our technology? Well, we develop a heat exchanger, which is extremely efficient, and we broke many barriers that until today were not possible. We have to produce the water out of the air in a way that it's cost effective when you drink it. All our machines need is power. It's literally a box that you plug and you produce water, drinking water, ready to drink. We've been able to do it in a very wide range of humidity and temperature, which made a big difference because about 90% of humans' habitats are near water source somehow. Otherwise, we can't live. This can change it. Very quickly, we don't have a lot of time. In a very simple way, we filter the air. Then it goes to our patented heat exchanger called Genius. That's where condensation occurs. We create water. It goes through filtration system and stored at cold temperature, ready to drink. On the way, we have different certifications for our water. We were the 2019 Time Magazine Award, CES Award, 2 years in a row for innovation, and many others. We were covered in many different media sites over the years. So developing a technology is not enough. You got to package it in a way that everybody can use it in different places on Earth. And this is our family of products that are actually available today. This technology was not available in the way that today water can be generated from air for the first time. We have a third source of water, which is the air, which is incredible because the air has more water than all the rivers combined on Earth. And the water in the air is renewed constantly. So unlike wells where they dry, the water in the air doesn't dry. It's renewed all the time. So it's basically almost an endless amount. To go very fast, we do it from 6,000 liters a day, which is 1,200 gallons a day, on a machine that's not very big. It's about a square this big. And it can give water for drinking purposes for 5,000 people each day. And all you need is power. You can plug it anywhere you want on Earth. We go down to smaller machines for 200 gallons a day, 8 gallons a day. And WaterGen had a special ability to miniaturize the technology that we can do it all the way down to a tiny cooler that you can take, and it's a charged battery up a mountain, and it will produce water for you every day. Basically, our markets are very diverse, from militaries to remote towns, to rural towns, to offshore rigs, anywhere where water is scarce. And also, in the United States today, there is about 80 million people that are about to have a lot of water problems. And the fighting is already on between California, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, a little bit more. And it's a huge problem. Colorado River is out, and the Hoover Dam is low as ever been. So we are offering a third source. We're not competing with something that's going away. We were able to miniaturize the technology all the way to be able to install it inside, for example, an RV. So when you buy the RV, you were asked, do you want the water package? You would say yes, just like you choose the sports package or whatever. And you will have a generator, which is very small, installed using the RV power, generating water for you anywhere you go with the RV. Now remember, water is the #1 source that you got to go back for. You can hold food for weeks, if not months. Water, it's a problem. Water can't stand too long. So with this technology, by the way, we already launched. It's available in certain RVs. You can go for 5 months. It doesn't matter. You'll constantly have water. And we're able to put it in trucks that cross the United States. And in the future, we feel it's going to be in many other areas, from your local boat that you take to a lake. You don't need to hold bottled water anymore. So, and that's where I'm going to finish a little bit the impact over the world so far. So we've already installed those machines in the World Soccer, in the Mondial, for people to drink, in different soccer stadiums, in the ATP tournaments around the world. By the way, again, you can see the benefit. It doesn't need any water source. So the air is. So we don't need to pipe it to anything. So they can just plug it anywhere you want on the golf course, on the football stadium, anywhere you have power. Just plug it, pure drinking water. We've been around different sports events around the world, and the biggest impact in the beginning was helping the world around us. So anywhere from hundreds of schools in areas where they don't have water, in South Africa, in the Gaza Strip, in Cambodia, in hospitals that need clean water to treat the patients. All they do, They install this and they have clean drinking water. The cost of the water is anywhere from a quarter to even less than bottled water. And that's part of the breakthrough. So there's absolutely no reason to haul water. You can produce it fresh on the spot. And so on. So this is in a few-minute nutshell, and we're happy to share that information with you guys.
Thank you. Fascinating.
Thank you.
Impressive.
Thank you.
So I'm now going to turn it over to Jamie Tyrell with RenaissanceAg. I had the good fortune to spend lunch with him. We learned about this innovative technology and learned a lot about camels.
Yes, we did have a camel chat. Thank you very much. I'll just wait for the. Oh, I click. Thank you very much. Technology, right? So thank you, everyone. My name is Jamie Tyrell. I'm with RenaissanceAg and a company called Cultivated. And what I'm going to talk to you today about is what's called fodder, or what we're talking about is an alternative animal feed that is actually using water, electricity, and seeds to produce fresh fodder. So we'll talk a bit about that. Let me tell you a little bit about the company, though. I'm Canadian. My business partners are American. I also have another business partner who is Canadian as well. So we can call this the quadlateral summit, VJ, next time. So the company is based out of Utah, and they are called RenaissanceAg, and their mission is to become basically a foundational partner to small and medium-sized livestock producers. And that is probably the majority of the farmers across Canada, across USA, and probably across the world in terms of size. And we want to help these livestock producers produce quality and volume by improving feed value and reducing overhead. And we're going to get a little bit more into detail about that. In terms of animals, you can see here we have some cows, goats, we have some pigs, we have some chickens, and as we described, we can talk about the camels later. Our mission is to essentially focus on the local food security by strengthening local small and medium-sized livestock producers. And we're looking at connecting those local farmers into the supply chain in a more meaningful and sustainable manner through the technology. We're also looking at, and we heard from somebody earlier, about converting animal waste and converting manure waste into alternative proteins for the system and incorporating that into regenerative ag principles and practices throughout the world. And we can talk about that throughout the IDM. So we all have a problem that we want to solve. That's why we're in business. This is the kind of pièce de résistance as to why we are here. We talked about water today a lot. Agriculture, as we know, specific to whether it's for animals or whether it's for crop production, for personal right direct to consumption, uses a lot of water. Uses about 92% of the water. VJ, you had a different slide. It was about 70%. In other words, it's a lot. It's a lot of water that we're producing for the type of food that we need. In terms of land use, 37% of land area. I'm going to proposition something to you today that actually reduces the amount of land to produce the same amount of product. And that's going to be kind of an interesting, compelling argument. In terms of energy, we use about 30% of global energy to produce this. And that's a lot. We heard about coal earlier. We heard about rising prices in fuel. We heard about rising prices in just about everything over the last 2 years to 6 months. And then we're also talking about greenhouse gases and how we can look at those. As we know, currently we are looking to increase our population. By 2050, we'll have approximately 10 billion people. And in terms of producing crops, we need to increase that production probably about fourfold. So we have a current population base now, and we're already exceeding that demand. So we're trying to find ways through what we call vertical farming or controlled environment ag as to how do we do that. So our product is looking at taking that to a step further, but for animal feed. So how do we control the environment? How do we control the vertical farming in a product through animal feed? And this is what our solution is. And it's basically a simple piece of technology. When I say simple, the inputs are seed, the input is water, and the input is electricity. Those are the only 3 things that you need. There is no catch to this. And let me explain through this video.
Nearly 2,000 acres of arable farmland are consumed by development each day in the United States. That's over 700,000 acres of land each year that won't be used to meet the massive agricultural needs across the world. In addition to that, almost 2/3 of the United States is abnormally dry, or worse, projected to be in a drought this year, which reduces the efficacy of pesticides and herbicides and cripples farm output and feed quality. Our solution to these problems? The self-contained, fully automated, shippable hydroponic barley fodder system that can match the yearly feed output of a 50-acre field of hay. It sits on all of 360 square feet of ground and doesn't need a foundation, building, or complicated maintenance. It represents dozens of tractor hours, thousands of gallons of fuel consumption, endless watering cycles, and broadcast applications of pesticides, fertilizers, and herbicides, all packed into a box that uses nothing more than 200 gallons of recycled water, barley seed, and ultraviolet light to create 2,000 pounds of feed per day, every day, rain or shine, with zero loss to feed quality. The animals love it, the environment loves it, and you will love it.
So this is what it is looking like right now. This is what we call the Pasture Box 3000. So we've actually made the system more efficient. So the video just described 2,000 pounds of fresh fodder per day. It is now a system that will do 3,000 pounds of fresh fodder per day. So we just did a system design over the last 6 weeks to increase that. We also have another system that does 21,000 pounds of the same per day in a modular system. The idea of modular is so that way it's controlled. The idea is that it's not going to, I'm not going to ask you to build a brand new system. I'm not going to get you to do that kind of new infrastructure on there. It talked about barley, but it does alfalfa, it does wheat. It basically does whatever you need it to do. So you control it versus it controls you. And it enables a producer to actually start to have control, and I use that word very heavily, control over the market as to what they're dealing with. So if you could ask a producer what is the biggest thing that you're subjected to, I'm subjected to inflation, I'm subjected to pricing costs, the rising cost of fuel, I'm subjected to, and then the list goes on and on. If I were to ask that same producer, if you could control that, would that be a game changer? And that answer is yes, whether you're in the United States, whether you're in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia, or whether you're in Israel, for example. It's pretty simple. It's a 6-day process. It's a sprout. It's a micrograin. It goes from seed to feed in 3 days, and it becomes a nutrient-dense product that is very highly adaptable for animal feeds. The food production that we're talking about in terms of reliability, if I'll give you an example right now is, as we went through COVID, we saw a lot of supply chain challenges that were really interrupted. Someone earlier today talked about having empty shelves in the grocery store. The meat bunker was empty. And we saw that supply chains were really fragile. So we went from years ago where everything was produced locally. We had gardens and all that kind of stuff. We said, you don't need gardens. We'll just increase more grocery stores. And then we'll have hubs so that way those grocery stores can have the food. And then we saw this kind of circle get a little bit bigger. But as soon as you put a spoke or kind of a crack in that and it became faulty, then you saw challenges that were interrupted all along that food chain. But if you could do this from a producer perspective, is enable that producer to have control and reduce less on that infrastructure that I just described, that's a really powerful statement locally, regionally, and globally. In terms of improved production efficiency, I just talked about seed to growth every day in 6 days. So it's a 6-day cycle, but every day you have the same amount of quantity coming out every day. The value is really high. We heard one woman talking about Benson Hill in terms of increasing the seed quality, so that way the output is also of high quality. This is something that we're seeing from our results and our research that we're having. Land sparing, so it produces 3,000 pounds a day. It also talks about the amount of acres it was going to replace. But I'm not going to say it as a replacement. What if you could now enable a farmer to produce feed quality, feed reliability, but enable them to take that current 50 acres and look for alternatives as to what they can do to help feed the nation. Do they look at regenerative ag practices? Do they look at, we've heard about alternative proteins. Can they increase the herd size with that space? There's so many more options now that enable them to do this with this kind of stuff. The minimal water requirements, we have a solution right here with water requirements, so I want to talk to you after, by the way. But in terms of what it requires, and when we look at 99% less water, and that is whenever I look at comparing how much irrigation, how much crop input does it take to produce this amount of output versus what the solution that we're providing, we actually have results that show that it is 99% less water. That's a real game changer when we just described what you just described, so thank you for including that. So this is an interesting way as to how do we move forward with that. Our roadmap is, I can describe it through Martha, I'm sure we'll ask a lot of those questions. We also have what's called the Microgreens Institute. So I can sit here and tell you about this system, what it does or doesn't do, but we have a Microgreens Institute, and what that is designed to do is to get the truth about fodder. The idea for us is to enable every producer to have the data in order to share that data. I don't want to proprietize it. I don't want to trademark it. I don't want to put a patent on it, because then we're getting into a silo solution where you have to beg me to release this data, and we're back to the same problems that we're solving today. The Microgreens Institute has 5 different partnerships right now with universities. We're doing trials on what does it look like to introduce cow-calf operation with fodder? What does it look like? How is it increasing milk efficiency with dairies? So we've partnered with Cornell University, which, as you know, is really big in dairy, Utah State University, University of Wisconsin, California, Davis, Florida, University of Guelph in Canada, where I'm from, and South Dakota State. We've talked with VJ about working with universities here in Missouri. So that's where we're up to right now. But we also work with the Microgreens Institute on farm, with farmers, for farmers. And whenever I say that, a farmer would ask me a question is, well, how does this impact my animals? And I can talk anecdotally about that, but why don't we use the Microgreens Institute to develop an inclusion diet that takes your current system and brings it into a future state with this inclusion? Are you still getting the same dietary fiber? Are you still getting the same kind of starch? Are you getting better sugars? Are you getting lower dry matter? Are you getting higher protein? What is it like that? And then how do we take that further and work with that farmer on implementing that on farm? So that's what one branch of our business does, what's called the Microgreens Institute.
Jamie, I'm just going to move us on. Can you wrap it up so we
Yeah.
have time for others?
Yeah, thank you. In terms of markets right now, we are in North America, so that's US, Canada, Mexico. We are in the Middle East. We have opened an office in Oman, which is the country right beside UAE. Currently, as of today, we are in the UAE at a really instrumental conference. We are title sponsors on that conference, and we are working with producers in Dubai specifically, as well as Abu Dhabi currently. Southeast Asia, as we mentioned, and Australia. So that's us. Thank you. I'll wrap that up, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Jamie. So now I'm going to turn it over to Larry Clarke with NanoGuard to talk about another aspect of the supply chain.
Sure.
Need a minute? Oh, we want to go to Matt first. Sorry, I didn't know if it was physical order or
I
list
can
order.
be flexible. I'm a startup.
So let's see. Larry, do you want to cover AeroFarms? Or Matt, do you want to cover NanoGuard? Or
So it's the slide order is now Mike DeCamp.
yeah, no, I get it. So Matt, we're going to turn it over. It is Larry or it's Matt? Matt. Okay, Matt with AeroFarms. Sorry for that.
Sounds good. Great. Let me see if I can get my screen going here. Okay. Can everyone see that? Or?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, very excited to be here today. My name's Matt Mandel, and I'm with AeroFarms. We're a world leader in indoor vertical farming, which you can get a sense of the kinds of things that we do on this first slide here, which is a shot from one of our facilities in Newark, New Jersey. We're based in New Jersey and growing in the US and expanding internationally, including in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. So the impetus for the company is really born out of a few macro trends that we saw and felt like we had to do something about. We saw increasing global population growth, which suggested increased demand for food in the future, and mixed with increasing health consciousness, which would require that the food be more nutritious and have fewer pesticides or other harmful chemicals. Compounding those demands, though, on the supply side, we saw increased water scarcity and a loss of arable land. And then, especially in the last few years, we've seen increased supply chain challenges, making it harder to get food from one geography to another. And so, given all these different factors, we thought that our indoor farming technology, which would allow you to produce healthy, sustainable, nutritious food at near the end consumer all around the world in a much more land and water and just generally resource efficient way, would be a critical technology for the future. And talking a bit about AeroFarms at a glance, we're a vertically integrated company, which means that we do everything from branding the product at retail to developing technology, operating actual manufacturing facilities, and doing strategic partnerships. And as you can see on the slide, we've been recognized for our work over the last decade with many awards and various forms of recognition. Zooming in a bit, when we say that we have a reputation, a real brand at retail, we found that our customers really have grown to trust and love the product that we have. They expect superior quality and flavor, never using any pesticides on the product, which means it's ready to eat. It's not triple washed, which means that the supplier had to try to get off as many pesticides as possible. There were never any pesticides on the product to begin with. They were sustainably grown. They represent new standards for food safety, which again allows it to be ready to eat. You don't have to be washing our greens. And we grow year round, which means it's always fresh and always made near the end consumer. And at the bottom of the slide here, you can see some of the retail partners that we work with. Obviously, these are a lot of great logos, and they also represent a diversity of customers. We work with the Walmarts of the world, the Whole Foods, e-commerce partners like Amazon Fresh and Fresh Direct. And what we found is that many different aspects of society, many different groups really love our product and appreciate what our brand represents. And so, talking a bit more about AeroFarms as a company, our technology, we really are vertically integrated, which means that we have expertise in mechanical engineering and building growing systems, plant biology, and understanding how to stress plants in different ways. We have expertise in sensors and capturing data, and then using data science and machine learning to develop inferences from that data. We are at the forefront of food safety and quality assurance. I joke with friends that I was used to PPE well before the pandemic, just because our grow environments really are so food safe. And then also at the very beginning with plant genetics and seeds. And this slide gives you another sense of one of our indoor vertical farming facilities. I think the most interesting thing to call it here is, and almost what's most distinctive about our grow process, is our aeroponic technology. So we, in order to be as water efficient as possible, we employ a precision misting technology for watering our plants. That's the aeroponic name, which is distinct from a lot of the other hydroponic growers, which we find are not as water efficient, let alone field farms, that use the kind of conventional irrigation technology, which is even less water efficient. And then, to give you a bit of perspective on AeroFarms as a business and our development plans, so we've been operating out of our headquarters in Newark, New Jersey. We have R&D facilities there in addition to a commercial plant. And we actually recently built what is the largest vertical farm of its kind in Southern Virginia, and have been operating out of that facility for the last few months. And we announced that we're going to come actually to the greater St. Louis area and build a similar facility to our one in Virginia, representing the state of the art of the technology. And we're doing that with a great consortium of local partners, including the World Wildlife Fund. Then beyond the domestic value proposition, we found that the Middle East specifically is a really great region for finding that fit between what our technology has to offer and what local consumers really want and need. And we've partnered with the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, or ADIO, in the UAE to build a state-of-the-art research and development facility. And then, I mentioned earlier that we have the commercial side of the business, building farms that produce products for our customers, Walmart, Whole Foods, Amazon Freshes. But we're also a technology platform. We've developed expertise in vertical farming from the top to the bottom, from genetics to mechanical engineering, and so on. And we've matched our expertise and our platform to the needs of a bunch of great companies, like you see here, leaders in their respective industries, to help solve their supply chain issues. And I think the best way to understand what is that expertise, what is our technological advantage, is understanding the relationship between these various very multivariate inputs on the left: temperature, airspeed, light spectra, relative humidity, CO2, water, nutrients, and so on, and how to control those as precisely as possible to create the outputs that we want, balancing taste, nutrition, texture, consistency, yield, color, shelf life. And we find that the vertical farming platform really uniquely allows you to control that function in a way that field farming just doesn't permit. And a big part of this process also is our digitization and ability to capture data and capture data, analyze the data, develop inferences, and improve our process, which we find leads to virtuous cycles and continuous improvement. And I think just to wrap up here, to zoom in a little bit more on something that's probably top of mind for this group, what exactly would our R&D center in the UAE be looking at? It's really pushing the boundaries of the field, understanding everything from organoleptic research and phenotyping, the machine vision and learning aspects, capturing data and developing inferences, more kind of strategic things that could be of interest to supply chain partners like speed breeding, advances in phytochemical analyses, and then robotics and automation, which are obviously interesting to anyone involved in the manufacturing process. And yeah, that's kind of AeroFarms at a glance. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Great progress. All right, Larry, I'll try this again. Larry with NanoGuard.
Yeah, thank you, Martha. My name is Larry Clarke. I'm the CEO of NanoGuard Technologies. A little bit about myself. I spent 30 years with Bunge here in town, trading and then ultimately running their North American ag businesses, which biofuels, oilseed processing, grain handling, fertilizer, transportation. It kind of was a lot. So I learned a lot about a little, or a little about a lot. Yeah. And I retired, and then Bunge called and said, hey, we've got this startup that we think you would fit really well. And I didn't know anything about startups, so I said, how hard can it be? So anyway, so that's how I got into NanoGuard. Yeah. All right, so our focus is really about food safety and food waste reduction. And the reality is, according to, if you talk to the World Health Organization, if food is not safe, it's not food. And so if you start there, you start with food safety. And then you look over at food that just actually is thrown out. So our technology is really, we look at it as a crossover technology of food tech and ag tech. It's based on what sounds very complicated, high voltage cold plasma, and there's a lot of work that's been done on that. We actually found that was not commercially sustainable, but we did find something that we could produce with high voltage cold plasma, and there are certain reactive gases that have antimicrobial activity and activity that can eliminate mycotoxins. And so we were able to take that and patent it globally. We're patented in 4 different countries or continents, and we also have FDA approval, which some people said we'd never get. But our focus really is about improving human and animal food safety, because that gets you reducing food waste and improving the life of both humans and animals, obviously. Looking at the World Health Organization, about 2 billion tons of food and feed are lost every year. That's every year. About half of that is because of microbial impacts. million people get sick. 400,000 people die from this. And then the mycotoxin is a carcinogen, but it's also very impactful, negatively impactful in the industrial animal feed sector. These are areas that we're focused on. What do we do? Well, we actually kill microbes, pretty simple. We detoxify toxins, so mycotoxins, bacteria such as E. coli, salmonella, fungus. We actually show very good results on killing viruses. There was a time when, right in the start of the pandemic, people were coming to us, but we were too early at that point. The technology is pretty straightforward. We move a gas, air, between two high voltage electrodes, and we produce that. That's a plasma field, and that plasma field creates reactive gases. So again, not a technologist, commodity trader, but that's about as simple as I can make it. We can knock down mycotoxins by 90%, and we're knocking microbes down by 6 logs, or 99.9999. So almost non-detectable levels. But who cares? Well, we've done a lot of work talking to industries, and a lot of people care. We want safer food. They want food that lasts longer. So, the potato industry, nutraceuticals, seed industry across the way at the Bayer folks, grain milling, flour milling, peanuts, big interest from the peanut market. Hazelnuts, very similar. Large row crops. The farm community, when it gets into mycotoxins, these are direct impact to their profitability. The pet food, if you own dogs, you should be concerned about mycotoxins. Ethanol industry, anything in the feed industry, the animal feed industry, 7% of total animal feed is basically wasted because of mycotoxins. That's 7% of a $500 billion market. So we've developed out the technology. We're still optimizing, but we're at the point of saying we've developed it out. We've got enough strategic customers that we're doing joint development agreements with, and now we're flipping it back, and we're starting to work with manufacturing to install it into processes. And if you want to see what a prototype will look like, we're looking at containerized or modular builds, so we can start small, but if we need it double the size, we just bring 2 of these together. So that's NanoGuard Technologies.
Thank you, Larry.
This one.
And last but not least, certainly, Mike DeCamp with CoverCress.
Thanks, Martha. Good to be here today. Let's see if I can do this. I have a video at the end, so I'm going to move through the slides fairly fast because I know we need the time, but also the video does a better job than I'll do. But when you think about CoverCress, we're really developing a climate-smart seed technology. That's the way we like to think about it. And there's really 3 key aspects of our technology. First, it's renewable. We have a product that when our grain is crushed, and we do that in partnership with one of our strategic partners, who happens to be Bunge, that the oil then is a really ideal feedstock source to produce renewable fuels. And it's an ideal feedstock source for 2 reasons. One, it's a non-food, non-feed, so we're not competing with corn, we're not competing with soybeans, we're not competing with other commodities of that nature. And secondly, we grow in the wintertime, so we get a very low carbon intensity score, which adds a lot of value, particularly in markets like California, where they have low carbon fuel mandates. We're sustainable, so as I mentioned, we are a cover crop, we grow over the wintertime, and because of that, we're improving soil health. We're doing that through increasing microbial activity. We're able to maintain nutrients in the soil during what had typically been a fallow period. We are also sustaining and sequestering carbon at the rate of about 1 ton per acre. So renewable, sustainable, and at the end of the day, we're an agricultural product. We need to go through the farm gate, so we need to be profitable. And we're profitable for that farmer because we're offering farmers a 3rd cash crop in what is typically a 2-season rotation of corn and soybeans. So you get 3 crops in 2 seasons, which enables farmers to really obtain a new revenue opportunity using their same land and using their same equipment, their same planting equipment, their same harvesting equipment. It's like maybe the quality of this got a little messed up, but what we're doing, how are we doing this? So we are taking, to create CoverCress, our product, we've converted a winter annual weed, a very common weed, ubiquitous across the world, into our product. And we've done that really through 3 steps. We use traditional breeding, and through traditional breeding, we've been able to improve the yield of pennycress. We've increased yields by over 50%. And really importantly, because we fit in a rotational window between corn and soybeans, getting CoverCress out of the field, so harvest maturity is really important. So we've improved the harvest maturity of pennycress by over a week. We have a very sophisticated gene editing program. We work with CRISPR-Cas9, and using CRISPR and using that gene editing technology, we've changed the composition of pennycress. We've increased the oil content by a little over 10%. We've removed unhealthy long-chain fatty acid, uric acid, out of the oil. And then we've also lowered the fiber of the seed, and that expresses itself through the seed coat. So we have a very thin, transparent seed coat. It changes the color of pennycress into our golden color CoverCress. And the so what about that is not only is it better for animal feed purposes to have that lower fiber content, but really critically, we're also have really significantly reduced, if not eliminated, the weediness characteristic of pennycress, and we've also improved germination. So obviously that's the most important thing for anybody that's providing a seed product, is that when you put it in the ground, that it will germinate easily. I think this slide speaks to itself, but we are part of the solution to a lower carbon future. We're not the solution, we're just part of that solution. I've talked a little bit about the fact that being a cover crop, we build that soil health. I think the other really piece to this is that we're really connecting the farmer, and we've talked a little bit about this today, the contribution or the impact that farming has to the carbon footprint in the world with greenhouse gas emissions. So we're really putting the farmers in a place where they're part of that solution, whereby partnering with us and planting CoverCress, they're ultimately producing a feedstock that's going to be used to make a low carbon fuel in the future. How do we get to market? So we really have 2 end markets that we think about. Initially, we're going to take, as we're scaling acres, we're going to take CoverCress in its whole grain form, and it's going to go as an ingredient into broiler chicken feed, and that at a very small inclusion rate, 2 to 4%. And what we're really doing is we're using the chicken's gizzard as the crush plant until we can scale and get to a size where we can work with Bunge and our other crush partners. But we're, in essence, the energy component in that feed. So we're replacing soybean oil or chicken fat or some other lipid that broiler producer would be using, and allowing the chicken to naturally extract the energy component while it feeds. Ultimately, though, the value proposition for CoverCress is as an oil seed going through crush. We are going to need to scale acres. We need to be in large volumes to be able to run efficiently through facilities, crush facilities. And so once we get to that stage, we really think of 2 end customers. A customer could be a crush partner like Bunge, where we're selling our grain, it's going to crush and the products are being made. Or we're very lucky to be in a partnership with Bunge and their partner Chevron, where ultimately that oil that we produce is being used to produce a renewable fuel, primarily renewable diesel, sustainable aviation fuel. And then, Bunge's been in the business for a long time of taking that other byproduct that gets created during a crush, the meal, and that gets fed for animals. So, I talked about the fact that we've developed this product, CoverCress. We've been working at it for over 10 years. We sit in this really enviable spot where we today have a contract. We actually have a guaranteed product offtake agreement with Bunge, with the Bunge Chevron JV. And so, how do we connect it to? How do we bring it through? And it starts with pulling the product through the farm gate. So in our model, we're not selling seed to the farmer. What we're doing is contracting with the farmer, asking them to perform a service for us to plant CoverCress, cultivate CoverCress, harvest CoverCress, and then deliver CoverCress. Farmer gets paid at delivery. And then once we get to that delivery point, then we work with a really well-distributed network of grain handlers, folks that have assets that are in the marketplace that can receive CoverCress, can clean it, can dry it, can condition it, store it, package it for us. And And because we're a winter crop, we're off season, we're off cycle with how a lot of these assets that exist in the Midwest are used at that time of the year. So it's an efficient use for our grain handling partners. So it truly is a partnership-based value chain that we're using to commercialize CoverCress. This last slide is really kind of a summary slide. I really like the graphic on the I guess your right side of the screen, and that just gives you a sense of the development of our crop during this long cycle when we're in the field. So planting occurs sometime after Labor Day, so September through early October. We are seeded on the ground, so it's broadcast seeding. We're not drilled. We like to have good soil, seed to soil contact. We plant at a very efficient rate. We're planting at 5 to 7 pounds an acre. We recommend a piggyback trip for a grower, so if a grower is doing some kind of vertical tillage pass after their corn harvest, we can put an air seeder on the back of that vertical tillage tool and spread the seed that way. If planting date is September 10th, the real planting date is the first day that it rains. So this year, we've talked a lot about the drought. We've been holding our breath. We're very thankful for the moisture that we received last night. I tried to get a hold of our chief agronomist before I showed up here just to see how things look, but I'm hopeful that we got a nice bit of moisture. But once we get that moisture and we start to emerge, what happens in the fall throughout the winter is CoverCress becomes a rosette. So think of about a palm-sized plant low to the ground. So we don't have the visual impact of other cover crops during that fall and winter period, but we are getting all the really important benefits through the root structure. So as those roots continue to grow, as I mentioned before, creating a home for microbes, breaking up soil, pulling nitrogen out of the ground so that we don't have the runoff into our river basins. All that activity is happening. We're in a winter crop. We need to go through 20, 30 days of close to freezing weather to get to the propagation state. So we go through the winter time, and once we get back into the spring and we get to our warmer days and more sunlight, the plant starts to bolt, produces a bolt, and then it starts to branch out, it starts to flower, and then by the time we reach mid-May is when really we're in full bloom. Then if you were to look at a CoverCress field, it's be looking like a soybean field, in full bloom. So we like to say you're getting cover when it counts. So that above ground cover exists during the springtime, where here in the Midwest, we typically would get really heavy rains. And then once it turns that golden brown color, we're ready for harvest. So that's a little bit about the cycle, and talked already about some of the value propositions for the farmers, as well as the sustainability benefits of our products. So if I could ask you guys to go ahead and run this video. This is a video we used at the Farm Progress Show this past summer. We had an opportunity to interact with several thousand farmers in Iowa, and this was really useful in that regard.
My name is Dale Sorensen, and I am the Chief Commercial Officer of CoverCress Incorporated. I'm a South Dakota farm boy originally and have been in agriculture my entire career. This will be my 41st crop season working in agriculture with farmers. The inspiration for CoverCress really started back in 2013 with a couple of gentlemen that were pulling field pennycress samples from across the countryside that really created the first base genetics that could be utilized in breeding and developing a new crop called CoverCress. CoverCress gives you an opportunity to raise a third crop in with corn and soybeans over a 2-year period. This crop actually grows through the entire winter season from fall till spring. And during that winter season, it is developing a root system. It's keeping something alive in that soil during the entire winter months, rather than a brown landscape that you typically see in farm country. With earthworms being able to move in, it's starting to create a home for a host of good things to happen in the soil. Being able to protect that soil surface during those heavier rain periods that can occur in March and April is another big benefit. As you get to the latter part of the season, this crop has the potential to capture close to a ton of carbon per acre during its growth cycle, when most acres in the central United States don't have anything going on. The goal of CoverCress over the next 12 to 24 months is to get a group of farmers starting to raise this in the fall of 2022 and then really start to increase acres in the fall of 2023. We will provide the seed for that farmer to actually seed in the fall months of the year, and then the grain from that crop the following spring when he harvests, we're going to purchase that grain back from that farmer and eventually take that into the poultry industry as a whole grain feed source and eventually crush for the value add of oil that can be used in biofuels in the future. When you really think about the opportunity that we bring, benefits that we bring, one, there's incremental revenue to the farmer. Two, there's benefits in the soil and carbon capture as you really look at the winter months. Three, we actually have a grain able to be utilized in feeding livestock. And four, we have an oil that comes from this grain that allows you to blend towards biodiesels or aviation fuel, so a renewable resource from a fuel perspective. The reception has just been unbelievably positive. We've got a limited launch this fall with several thousand acres, and we've actually got more farmers interested than we're going to have seed available as we get to this fall.
One quick side note, one of those gentlemen that were referenced that were going around their hands and knees pulling pennycress samples is sitting right here in front of me.
Yeah, so Mike, I'm going to start with you. I remember way back when, as you say, VJ was first working on this, the thought of growers at all letting you come between their corn and soybeans, like forget it. Not to mention even thinking about the downstream guys like Bunge or Chevron. So what combination of externality changes have occurred or internality changes that you had to accomplish got you to this phenomenal point in time?
Yeah, I think one of the keys to success for us is, we made the joke earlier, Larry made the joke about being able to pivot as a CEO of a startup. We've been lucky. We've been focused on the same goal from the beginning, and it was all about having a non-food, non-feed oil seed that could be used for production of renewable fuels. And there's no doubt about it. We were kind of ahead of the time. I think we were a climate-smart product, ag product, before that term was ever coined. And there were a lot of doors that got closed. There were a lot of doors that were closed by farmers. There were a lot of doors that were closed by the Bunges of the world. There were a lot of doors closed by the downstream fuel producers, and but we stuck with it. We were very careful with our capital, and I think that was a really key strategy. I give a lot of credit to the guys that came before me to say, look, we're developing something new here. We only get to look at this one time a year. We had goals for how we were going to prove. Are we going to hit our yield goals? Is a great example. And if at the end of a season, if we didn't reach those goals, there's no need to have a lot of capital on the balance sheet and just to return it back to owners. So we just were kind of the little engine that could. We just kept chugging along, and then over the last couple of years, the world turned, right? I mean, from an industry standpoint, right? You look at, and the best example for that is the Bunge Chevron joint venture focused on renewable fuels, which was a catalyst for our business, and then from a government standpoint as well. I mean, there's no doubt that there's a keen focus on how we're going to tackle this climate change issue, and the great example there would be, from an agricultural standpoint, would be USDA's $2.8 billion Climate Smart Commodities Grant Program, which unfortunately we did not get one of those grants, but we're doing okay. So I think, Martha, it was staying focused, using capital wisely, and then probably being lucky.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I always find it funny when the Boeing or the Air Force guys say, we're never going to be plugging our planes in. We're going to need that renewable jet fuel, right?
Yeah, never until you do, right? I guess, right?
Yeah, right. So Barak, you've been patient here, listening to the rest of the panelists. You come from a very different side of it, right? Kind of creating desperately needed water that many people have talked to today, where it doesn't exist today. Have you faced opposition, obstacles? Has that been a eventless journey, like piece of cake?
Well, I'm going to think I'm going to talk about, for example, in the last few weeks I've been in Arizona, and they're running out of water. Now, water is obviously essential. We all take it for granted. The second you're out of water at your house, you can't even imagine. You're like, oh my God. So I'll give you an example, obstacles. So big developers in Arizona, they want to develop 5,000 houses. They go to get permission from the state, right? They don't get it now for the last 2 years. Why? We have no water. If you want to develop those units in Arizona today, you have to show a 100-year water plan. That's impossible. It's a joke. And the reason it's required is because Arizona doesn't have water. Show me 100-year, we'll give you a permit. Now, that's a huge problem. And they're not building those units. What we're saying to Arizona, for example, and other states will follow, use WaterGen as a permit for water. Like your HVAC. Each unit that will be built will have a unit like HVAC. It's not that bigger. It will generate all the water for that house. And all those added residents will not tap into what's going away. And it's not coming back usually, most likely. In 200 years, the graph is like this.
Yeah.
So you're talking about hurdles. This is something that the moment it will be perceived as, oh my God, we can actually do that, then many solutions will be able to be granted in California, Arizona. It's just a matter of time, and when the pain is going to be so unbearable until they'll need to do things like that. Yeah. But we have to be also patient and understand that those municipalities and those big managements of water for those states, they never did that before.
Yeah, sure.
So they have to go through all the regulatory process with us to feel safe that this will actually give solution. And it will. It's already giving solution.
Yeah, so transformative.
Yeah.
I must admit, somebody during the break from St. Louis asked me to ask you if it's a solution to St. Louis humidity.
It's actually funny. So when we established the first production line in the US, we have a testing facility in the end of the production. So the units get out, and then we test them for a few days. And after the first week, the entire walls cracked. I'm talking cracks this thick. It will suck all the humidity from the air. So obviously in a closed building with a little bit of, but outside it's no problem. So it actually, it's very powerful.
So AeroFarm, Renaissance, Barak, you guys are in different countries, right, around the world. UAE, US, Canada examples. How have those experiences been? Have those helped each other? What sent you to those different geographies? How has that strategy evolved? What can the rest of us learn who are maybe still at an earlier stage? So Matt, I'll start with you on the video.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a great question. One of the most interesting things in my role at AeroFarms is getting to talk to whatever it is, large companies, governments, nonprofits, all around the world, and really understanding what is it about our technology that's so interesting to them. And I almost think like one of the best ways to really understand your business, it's not just to talk to customers in one geography or one kind of customer, but to have that perspective on all the different things that people see in your technology that you might have not even thought of as such a high priority. So I think, we've learned a ton, and obviously there's a very nice value proposition to the Gulf and the UAE in particular. But yeah, I think like a great lesson to businesses looking to expand, or even just businesses focused in one geography, but that want to understand themselves even better, is to have those conversations. There are these macro trends all around the world, but it's really interesting to talk to people in different geographies and really understand how those manifest in different ways in different places.
And Matt, would it be would the crops need to be different based on the climate differences, as well as maybe based on what the consumer demand is in each of those geographies? So it's quite unique everywhere you go?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, what we do, the kind of like umbrella term for the industry, is controlled environment agriculture. And so the way that we see our technology is really that we control the environment no matter the conditions that we're in. And so I think something that helps us with our expansion is that we're so good at controlling the environment. So then when you walk into the grow room, it doesn't matter if you're in Abu Dhabi or New Jersey or Virginia, we can create the same conditions. Doesn't matter, the amount of sunlight that's going on, because we control the lighting, and we control the humidity, we control the temperature. And then in terms of products, I think it's also an interesting thing something that's been interesting for me. We've introduced new product lines domestically in the US. So one of our standout and most popular products is retail microgreens. Microgreens are pretty difficult to grow in the field and have traditionally been used as more of a garnish in food service or restaurant settings. But we've pioneered something that we think is a really unique value proposition and had a ton of success in that with that in this market. And so I think we kind of see it's interesting to think about like meeting where the market is and then also bringing innovative products to the market.
And Jamie, it sounds like maybe you've had similar experiences. I mean, I learned from you camels and chickens don't eat the same thing.
No, they don't. They eat similar things in a different manner, but I'll certainly back up what AeroFarms is doing. And by the way, they're a real big innovator in the field. If you don't know much about human food, CEA, AeroFarms is certainly a massive leader in what they're doing. So well done to you on that. We could chat about the fodder game after, by the way. So in terms of what we've done is very similar. We have a product that needs to be tested throughout the world. And so we played the conference scene for some time. So as a startup, you kind of have a limited pool of money, and where are you going to put that pool of money and how are you going to do that? So we dedicated a bunch of money to looking at how does that work and testing our product and our market and our reception. I'm here so you can kind of understand the success we've had. I met VJ in California, to be honest, and we've continued that relationship. We did this in Dubai. There's a great big conference called AgriMe that's currently going on right now. And we met some really key players, I'll say, in the market. And we understood the value of partnerships and from a foreign direct investment versus a company just coming in and saying we're going to do X, Y, and Z. We talked about camel. So at the time, I didn't realize that camel milk is an actual product that people in the GCC drink and eat, and they race, and they also look at beauty camels. So understanding that is certainly an interesting market, and how can we provide a solution is through an investment or through a product led by the company in country, as well as partnering with them as well. Another iteration of that is we have a company in Thailand. We are working with a dairy in Thailand, and they feed their cows rice. And to hear that for us, that's really, I'm not going to say strange, but different. And so how do we work with them on a similar challenge that they have with their environment that they want to grow rice in? So the CEA, or the Controlled Environment Ag, that we talk about can do that. Is we can take a certain type of product and adapt it within the control environment and enable us to create conditions so that way it can be grown in that environment.
Great. Barak, UAE, Israel, here.
Yeah, so for us, the UAE, first of all, producing water, it's so essential. So where the biggest pain is, it's natural. So the UAE has been an amazing partner of ours. We have established business there across the board. There's just been a wonderful partnership, and it still is, and it's growing. And you can see WaterGen products across the board and in different sizes of machines, and from office coolers to parks and so on. That solved a lot of their problems, and they've been great partners. I think the second step for us is the triangle between Israel, the technology. UAE was, the US is, it's less extreme, but that's why we came into the US a bit later, pretty much 2 to 3 years ago. But obviously now the problem is getting more and more extreme, so we feel it's the right next step for us. Obviously, it depends how big the problem is. In our business, there is literally people that are suffering with no water, or have wells that are drying up and they're hauling water in the US. or making life a little bit more comfortable. For example, when you go and you buy an RV, we launched the first RV partnership. They're going to ask you, do you want the water package? You're going to say yes. It's going to be already in the RV. You won't see it. You just got to have abundant and pure drinking fresh water consistently. So you can go to a mountain for 2 months, and those water will keep being generated as long as you have power in your RV. And when that's done, it's going to fill your shower tank as well. So that's the second part of WaterGen, which is just making our sport life even better. But that's a different tier of actually, of what I said.
I imagine from some of the pictures you showed at the end, you have a lot of NGO kind of collaborations as well, like working with a lot of nonprofits trying to help.
Yes, we do. We have a lot of that, and we're growing that base, especially in North America. That's always great. It's very important to say that, WaterGen, is owned by Mr. Mirashvili, and he came into this business wanting to do good. That's part of the mission of WaterGen. So we keep thinking about that on our everyday. So that's always wonderful to see that when we get to those rural areas. I can give you examples. I've been in places in the US, they drive 20 minutes each direction to haul water. You say, how is that even possible? I never knew. It exists here. So by just buying WaterGen generator, they have water. It's as simple as that now.
So I'm going to ask from questions from the audience, but I've been fortunate to have been given one by Dr. Needleman on his way out. So I'll ask that, allowing the rest of you time to all race to the microphone. So Phil was asking nitrogen. Nitrogen is what's really worrying him, and he felt like a couple of the technologies on the stage are helping impact that. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you first.
Sure. So we're probably not helping on one hand, and we're helping a lot on the other hand. So we do, just to be real transparent, we do recommend some nitrogen in the springtime when we're getting ready to bolt. So it's about 50 units of nitrogen, so it's a small amount. So there is a negative impact to our carbon footprint as a result of that. But the real benefit is this underground root structure. And so we're part of a large USDA NIFA CAP program called I Prefer. We're partners with several academic universities, one of which is Illinois State, and Dr. Bill Perry at Illinois State has been charged with doing the research on what's happening underground. And what Dr. Perry has found is that we are scavenging all that nitrogen. So as the water is running through the soil and working its way into our river basins, there's no nitrogen that's going along with that water, which is a big concern here in the Midwest. And there is a need for a solution there, whether it's going to be a solution like CoverCress and other cover crops, or the government having to step in and regulate nitrogen use. So, I think we're doing our part on the nitrogen runoff issue by being a cover crop.
Nice. Jamie?
Yeah, I would segue that. Thanks for our product doesn't have any inputs at all. There's zero pesticides, zero herbicides, zero inputs. So to say that we have any nitrogen impact, we don't because we don't use it. One thing that we had talked about in terms of mitigating this even further, and you've talked about the soil, and our firm also believes in regenerative ag practices. So while we're able to provide a solution through the land that we're able to do that, our same system actually is able to convert a lot of waste, whether it be manure, whether it be animal waste in terms of slaughterhouses and that kind of waste, or food waste, and can convert that using black soldier fly larvae and converting that into proteins. And then that also gives you an example of where you can either convert it into proteins. There's also a waste component from there, which is called, I'm going to call it a fertilizer just for the terminology, but you can also take that and put it back into the soil. So that gives you a negative waste component in terms of what you're using on farm and then converting that back into the soil. So getting back, putting those inputs back into the soil. Rotational grazing is often used for soil compaction. So you're talking about your crop in terms of spray seeding. Those are practices that we involve with that. So the system does produce fodder, but it also produces another entity and enables the farmer to actually bring back the soil, bring back the health of their land based on using this technology piece. And it's not one solution. So this could be a solution coupled with your product, coupled with that. So we can really see that collaboration and imagine being able to do that in a desert.
Yeah.
So I toured multiple farms in UAE and in Oman, and they're growing their irrigation, the amount of water they use to do that on a pivot per day is insane. But they're doing it in desert. And when I say a desert, the soil looks yellow, and they're growing alfalfa out of that, and they're growing different types of they call roosie grass. Is it high quality? No. But could we implement systems like what you're describing with extracting water from air and then regenerative ag practices? Absolutely can. It's a game changer.
So Larry, Matt talked a bit about preventing bacteria and mycotoxins on the front end. You have another way of kind of solving it on the back end.
Yeah, well, actually, we look like we think about and.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
so the theory of and versus or. We are post-harvest, but from there on, we feel like we can positively impact the safety and sustainability of food. And we, I sit up on stage like fairly often with a lot of smart people looking to improve productivity. And I've been a contrarian all my life. I look at it the other way around. I'm going to save what we've already grown. Yeah. And to me, that's the important part where NanoGuard brings. We are the tip of the spear. I don't know of any other companies out there that are doing this. About 90% of the deals are done with identifying the problem. Not so many are done with trying to fix the problem, and that's why there's one area we think we have a niche in that regard. We've actually talked to vertical farm as well, and we think there's a spot there for us.
Neat. Yeah, I mean, the idea of acres we could spare if we didn't lose so much downstream is astonishing, right?
When you think about, so coming from the background of exporting, the big ag product, corn, wheat, soy, the reality is we exported water. We were shipping something from an area of excess to an area of need, and the vast majority of that differential was created, was water.
Yeah, fascinating. Have you run into challenges, because you clearly have to work with the whole supply chain as well. You came from that supply chain. Right. You know how crotchety you can be. So, so how has that been, trying to find those collaborations? And
yeah, I think that's the hardest part when you think about general food loss or food waste. It is a chain, and there are multiple links in the chain, and there's the transparency is getting better. The ability to follow food through from the farmer all the way to the consumer, it's getting better with the blockchain technology. But it's still many different companies that make up the chain. And so think about if you owned a company that through waste was losing 35% of your product. I don't know what business would stay in business. Yeah. In the ag business, we love 2% margins. Well, why is it so hard for a farmer to make money some years? It's because he's starting out 35% in the hole. So if we can fix that, if we can narrow it, reduce it, there'll be more. The pie will be bigger.
So I'm not seeing a line at the microphone. Is anyone chomping at the bit with a question? Great. Yeah, I can repeat it if you want to.
I don't think it's on. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
As a retiree of McDonnell Douglas and Boeing, I would like Mike to elaborate on the characteristics of CoverCress as a sustainable aviation fuel. Sure. Thank you.
Great question.
So if you think about today, this whole issue with electrified vehicles and the question, and we made the point earlier about, Martha made the point about never saying never. Oh, thank you very much. about whether we'll have electric planes or not. So the sustainable aviation fuel today, there's a large push for how do we lower that carbon profile of sustainable aviation fuel. And there's been a focus for a long time now. So there's been a lot of success in Europe with camelina, which is another winter oilseed crop similar to CoverCress. The oil being used as a feedstock in lieu of some other crop, some other oilseed that has a much higher carbon footprint than we would or they would, because we grow in the wintertime. And when I talk about carbon intensity scores, these are models that are run, and these models take into account a lot of different variables, and they look at kind of the impact of growing something or the life cycle of anything, and the full life cycle of that carbon, all the carbon that goes into producing X, whatever that is. And then there's an indirect look at how does it impact the land. And in that's ILOC, the ILOC model. In that model, there's a lot of benefit that's given to products that can produce more protein for the world without having to use another acre of land, particularly tear down another acre of Brazilian Amazon forest. So that's where these winter oilseed crops like ours get this benefit. And so that oil then, which can be used to produce sustainable aviation fuel, which is very similar to renewable diesel, drop-in fuels, no change in how the process to make the fuel there's no change to that has to occur. There's no change to the engines that has to occur. So that's really the impact for us. Now, that pull-through for sustainable aviation fuel is still being developed. Chevron recently acquired Renewable Energy Group, who was an investor in us. Renewable Energy Group has been making renewable diesel through lots of different lipid feedstocks for some time now. That technology for the production of sustainable aviation fuel, at least here in the United States, hasn't really occurred yet. So we're a little on the forefront of being a feedstock for sustainable aviation fuel. Europe's ahead of us relative to the U.S., but that's really the catch for us, is being a source and a sustainable source versus used cooking oil or some other lipid for the production of that fuel.
And I'm sure as a McDonnell Douglas expert, you're probably the expert on knowing that complicated regulatory path for getting that fuel approved, right? Yeah. Another question. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Daniel Gray. I'm from APAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee in D.C. We're a group of American citizens who advocate for a stronger U.S.-Israel relationship. But my question is, we heard earlier today about how it can be often challenging for startups in the agriculture industry to actually raise money and grow their companies. So if you guys could briefly just share your experience of how you got off the ground and how you were able to get funding and be successful.
Who wants to start?
I can comment for two different companies. Networking was a big one, and pitching to excuse me, sorry about that. Pitching to hundreds of different people in that sphere was crucial. So we cultivated as one of the examples was we acquired a Series A raise. Right now we're looking at a Series B raise. That Series A enabled us to kind of validify what we were doing, kind of quantify that, hire some staff from there. Was it a bit of luck? Some people say there's always luck. I don't like to use that word too much. I call it being tenacious and consistent, persistent. That's where I do that, and you just land on the right person. In terms of the Renaissance story, very similar story. The two founding partners come from a heavy technology company. And in that, the upper sphere of that technology company that they left received pitches from them, and then they connected themselves from there. So how do you do that? There's no real script per se that if you follow this story, it's going to work for you. But certainly being persistent is one. Accessing networking and Rolodexing as many people as you can is that. And get comfortable with hearing no and actually understanding what that means in terms of if you break down the word no, it means next opportunity. So that attitude really comes a long way in looking at that.
And I'm going to keep telling myself that.
Yeah.
Larry?
Yeah, so ours was a different path. It was, we were looking for somebody to find, I use the term validate our value potential. Potential is because it's always down the road, right? But getting in, I was thinking about the mighty cricket tale of woe not being able to find these collaborators, and that was never our problem. I guess this problem was a big enough problem. People wanted our solution to work. Our problem is getting the solution to work. We think we've broken the science of it now, but finding people to validate you, either on the science side or the commercial side, you've got to get one of those done. And because if you can't, then you're just saying, trust me, and that doesn't work so well.
Mike?
Yeah, I echo what Larry has to say there. I'd add to it is finding that ecosystem. So, we've talked about that here in St. Louis, and yesterday, as part of a lead into this, Don had a chance to be interviewed on the local NPR station, and it's true. So you look at a company like CoverCress, we were uniquely situated. The folks that founded CoverCress, many of us came from Monsanto, so we were St. Louis based. St. Louis happens to be this huge ag tech sector, and we happen to have this very well-connected group of early investors that are interested in these questions, and biogenerator being one of them. And without biogenerators' help, CoverCress wouldn't really be here today as an initial investor. So, if there was a recommendation, when you're starting a business, you're giving a lot of thought to what's the problem, what's my solution, what's my product fit for a market. Those are all really critical questions every business has to answer. But you should ask yourself the question, where, in what region, what area, where are the resources located conveniently enough that I can do this really efficiently? And, in ag, I've said this before, I can't think of anywhere in the United States that's better than St. Louis in that regard. There's definitely good competition in Raleigh and other places, but I think looking for a place where you're going to have companies like Bunge that said, hey, the world's no longer awash with oil, we need more oil. CoverCress is a solution for that. We're in the backyard. It made, and so creating those relationships, having those networks, and a lot of times they already existed, right? Because you've developed those through other avenues by being a part of that ecosystem or part of that area.
Yeah, I always say I call biogenerator parental venture. It
Parental
definitely
venture.
wants a return, but it's very helpful in helping you think things through and being there to connect you with other people, helping you when things are a little rough. So I say that about the whole ecosystem, right? I mean, fortunately, we're typically not in competitive startups, and so you can really help each other out with aspects of your strategy, relationships, other things, and now we're including the broader community here in helping each other out.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah. So Barak, we'll let you close out. We got 3 minutes left. What do you want to say about raising money?
Well, we don't raise money. We're owned by one billionaire investor, and that's his company.
Well, we
and
feel
he's very passionate about it. So, sorry, that's why I was quiet.
You're going to be mobbed. You're going to be mobbed after this, I think. Yeah. You want to hear the insight on camels? Sorry, I set you up like that.
Yeah, I met a lot of wealthy sheiks over in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Oman for sure.
But did you hear his comment on there's 3 types of camels? What, racing?
4.
4.
Yeah.
Yeah, the beauty one.
The
that caught
beauty
my
one.
attention.
Yeah, the beauty camel is judged by its lips. And one time it was disqualified because someone had put Botox in the... true story, actually. I thought the person that was telling me this, and they were giving us a tour, they said, oh, and these are the beauty camels. I'm like,
This camel should definitely drink mineral water.
And then they explain the story about, but these camels are highly sold for, I'm going to say, seven-figure quantifiers of value, much like horse. So if you look at horse industry in the U.S., Canada, Europe, they have race horses. They have high-performance jump horses, but they also have beauty horses. And a lot of this is a cultural thing, let alone a kind of transactional thing. So we're not talking, I don't know if anybody's a billionaire in here, but we're talking next level wealth in terms of what it is able to do that. But the amount of care that they're looking at. So what is it? They actually coined this phrase for me, but now there's a new book. Is have you ever examined what your food ate? Had to hear it a few times in my head. What did my food eat? So in other words, what did the cow eat today? What did and so on and so forth. And there's actually a book now that actually talks about that kind of stuff. And so how it was reflective in this. And they related it back to that, is that in order for this camel to be more beautiful, we have to basically feed them a really specific diet. And they went through the list of what it is. And so when we were talking about fodder, it was a really wonderful aspect for them to look at that because of the zero inputs, because of the social impact, the environmental impact, and also the nutritional benefits that were involved in there. So yeah, so definitely I've learned a whole lot about camels over the last 6 months for sure.
So I count it a successful day if you've learned something that might help your business, and you've also learned something you can tell your kids about tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
So VJ Don, I don't know what's up next here. Thank you, panel, for a wonderful job.
Thank you.
We were so happy to host our friends from the United Arab Emirates and from Israel and from the embassies and the consulates, all coming to St. Louis. It was a great buzz, a great feel. A lot of trust was built here. A lot of new relationships were created. We are really looking forward to this not just having been the last symposium, but this will have been the first symposium and the beginning of a long trilateral collaboration that will bear great fruit, that will benefit all three of our geographies and the world in general.